Welcome back to 28storms.com. I am Jason Moreland, and I'm here to give you your latest tropical cyclone update for this February 15th, 2011. Here is a look at your latest precipitable water analysis for much of the area. And the first region you may notice is this area of cyclonic rotation north of Western Australia. That is what the NRL Monterey Agency is calling 98S Invest. And we'll talk the most about that particular system because it has the highest chance of tropical development within the next couple days. We also have newly declared 99S Invest, which is located near Darwin, and you don't see it too well on this imagery because half of the circulation is over land, but several forecast models show that system moving more toward the west into the Timor Sea, and of course once it moves out over open waters it has the potential to become a tropical system. Down the road, some of the models are also developing a weak or possibly even a tropical cyclone over toward the islands, but as I said, that's really far out and down the road, so our main emphasis in this video will be the two tropical systems closest to Australia, the main one being this one, which is in the early stages of tropical cyclone formation development already. This is the latest tropical cyclone formation alert from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. So this is the area that they're really keeping a close watch on. The Bureau of Meteorology also thinks there is a high chance of tropical cyclone formation in this area. They give it about a high chance of development by Thursday, when in fact I really think it's going to happen much sooner than that. It could actually happen within the next 24 hours because it looks like the system is well on its way to becoming our next tropical system. This is the latest infrared imagery, and as you can see, this system has really gotten its act together over the past day or so. Convection is on an increasing trend overall. You may see a slight decrease toward the last couple frames, but that's typical for developing tropical cyclones. It's normal for convection to increase and then decrease sporadically in a back and forth waxing and waning trend. But overall, the system is getting its act together. And this is the latest water vapor imagery. And as you can see, conditions appear to be fairly favorable because you don't see any cloud tops being heavily sheared. In fact, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center noted in their latest discussion that there is a ridge axis in the upper levels that's got fairly favorable upper level winds underneath it. So this has got a decent amount of room of favorable conditions for it to really try to get its act together. Going back to the SIMS website for a moment, you can really see the upper level conditions becoming fairly favorable. This is the upper level environment, and there's a fairly hefty ridge axis, and the tropical system is located right underneath it. Here's a look at your latest shear tendency, and the dark blue areas are areas with little to no wind shear, and the system is coming in from the northeast and steadily moving into the more favorable environment, where conditions should be fairly favorable for development over the next couple days. Here's a look at the latest visible imagery from much of Australia, and you can easily pick out the two tropical systems that we're most interested in. Here's the 98S Invest system that now has the tropical cyclone formation alert, and as you can see, especially in the last few frames, that circulation is really trying to tighten up. There's still some lacking convection near the immediate center, but that's forecast to change based on the forecast model guidance and the upper level wind conditions that we're currently seeing. You also see this system with the circulation still mainly over land, but as it moves off to the west, that's going to be the next area to watch over the next few days. Here's the most recent ASCAT imagery, which to be honest hasn't been updated in quite a long time. It's been several hours since the satellite has passed this area. But as you can see, this was much earlier in the day, and you can see that first of all, much of the storm did not get included by the data, but you can see the outer periphery of the circulation, and we're seeing satellite estimated winds in excess of 20 to 25 to near 30 knots already. And this was, once again, several hours ago when the system didn't look quite as healthy as it does now on satellite imagery. So I wouldn't be surprised that, when we get the next ASCAT pass, we'll see a much more well-defined center of circulation, and hopefully much of the data will be available on the next pass. Also, here's a quick look at sea surface temperatures in the region, and certainly sea surface temperatures are more than warm enough for tropical cyclone formation in this area. There is also certainly more than enough oceanic heat content for tropical cyclone formation. Now, one thing I will say is that there is still some model disagreement in terms of where this low pressure center could track. For example, the GFS shows a general track toward the east after it stalls out for a couple days. And once again, like I said, with the track more toward the east, back toward the Australian coastline. Whereas the EC, MWF, and NOGAPS models show more of a southerly track right along the coast. Now, for any interest further down the coast of Western Australia, you wouldn't have to worry so much about a very intense tropical cyclone because the water temperatures do fall below 26 degrees Celsius in this general area. But once again, the jury is still out as to whether or not this low will track more toward the east in the warmer regions where the storms can maintain its intensity more. Here is a look at the latest steering for the low-level layers of the atmosphere, which are the main dominating steering factors when you have a fairly weak tropical system, and that's exactly what we have right now. And as you can see, the general pattern is we have low-level ridging across much of central Australia that extends into the southern Indian Ocean, and that's the reason why our tropical low is beginning to move more toward the southwest. Now, the difference in the model tracks comes in when we have a trough of low pressure coming out of the mid-latitudes, and it's going to be moving northeast. And there's some disagreement as to the intensity of that system and how much it'll beat down the ridging that's currently over Australia. That'll make all the difference between whether the storm moves more toward the south or more toward the east. Now here's the latest ECMWF European forecast over the next several days. And there's several features that I would like to point out as we go through time. So this is the current weather map, and as we go into the 24-hour period, we begin to see our low pressure area begin to intensify further north of Western Australia, while the tropical low near the Northern Territory isn't very well defined on this image just yet. And we also have a broad area of low pressure over the southern Pacific and Coral Sea. 48 hours out, our Western Australian tropical system is becoming better defined and is becoming more of a formidable tropical cyclone. Certainly nothing intense, but developing nonetheless. Now, by 72 hours, it's becoming more defined. We still don't have much going on along the Northern Territory or Timor Sea, and broad area of low pressure remains over the South Pacific. 96 hours, and this is getting into the Thursday time frame. We have the low, or now tropical cyclone, beginning to move ever so slightly toward the south, and we are beginning to see some surface low reflection here over the Timor Sea. By 120 hours, we now certainly have a potent tropical cyclone. Certainly not a severe tropical cyclone, but definitely one that bears watching. And suddenly our two other tropical systems are beginning to show up quite clearly as the tropical low over the Timor Sea really begins to try to get its act together, and we really see a more consolidated area of low pressure to the northeast of New Caledonia. By day 6, our tropical cyclone off the Western Australian coast is now beginning to intensify further, but it's also beginning to move toward the south. As it moves into the further south latitudes, it will begin to encounter cooler sea surface temperatures and also be absorbed by non-tropical cold fronts that are coming out of Antarctica and areas further south. So eventually this system will fall apart as it becomes absorbed, whereas you still have a developing tropical cyclone between New Caledonia and Vanuatu, and we're still keeping a close watch on a very compact but certainly interesting area of low pressure that very well could be a small tropical cyclone. Now, by 192 hours, you see the original tropical cyclone beginning to fall apart, and the system that was originally over Darwin and surrounding areas is now beginning to move southwest as the system over the southern Pacific continues to intensify further. Now, day 9 and 10, this is really far out, so we'll go through it really fast. But eventually that second system begins to fall apart over inland Australia. The other one is absorbed by a front, and we have a very powerful system over the South Pacific, but again, that's 9 days out. And by day 10, the system is beginning to turn south and is beginning to recurve. Quickly looking at some other model guidance, this is the latest GFS forecast. And as we go into the 24 to 48 hour period, we have, as you can see, this trough of low pressure is going to slowly beat down the ridge that's currently over central Australia. And It's just enough for the tropical entity that's currently over here to begin shifting toward the east, as it doesn't have much of a block further south, so it's just going to start sliding further east along with the trough as it moves off toward the east. Okay, so that's the latest GFS forecast. Now, the no gaps is more in agreement with the ECMWF. As you can see, by 48 hours, you can pick up the tropical cyclone just off the coastline right here. And you do see the trough beginning to really amplify to the south of Australia, but it's not quite enough to fully pick up the tropical cyclone. And instead, the storm just continues to move ever so slightly parallel to the coast as it begins to weaken over cooler water temperatures. And this is by 132 hours, so that's between days 5 and 6. Now, this is the latest Canadian CMC model provided by the Weather Online model website. And here is the latest 6-hour forecast, and we have the broad area of low pressure with a weak low currently over the Northern Territory. And as we evolve into 48 hours, we'll see that the storm is organizing, so pretty much all model guidance shows an intensifying tropical cyclone in this general area. We still have a broad low currently over here, and now by 72 hours, we'll take a look what the model shows. And if this can load, yes, we have a developing system for sure, no doubt about it. Still a broad area of low pressure over toward the north, and the model still shows broad area of low pressure over the Coral Sea and surrounding islands. By 120 hours, this model is in a lot of agreement with the no gaps model, with a steadily intensifying storm as it begins to parallel the coast. And finally, by day 6, we'll let it load. And it doesn't show much in the way of movement, but you know, this is a 6-day forecast. It's highly subject to change. And we still have a suspect area over toward the north with that second system. And in fact, the model also shows a tropical cyclone to the east-southeast of New Caledonia by day 6. So, just to sum things up really quickly here, we do anticipate that 98S Invest will become a tropical cyclone over the next 48 hours, but thereafter the forward motion of the storm will be very slow, and in fact it should be nearly stationary for quite a few days out in this general region. So this will give interests in Western Australia plenty of time to monitor the storm. The only thing is that, yes, it will provide a lot of shower and thunderstorm activity right along the coast, as you can see that it's already doing that. But in terms of an actual landfall, it would still be several days away. And once again, there's a lot of model disagreement, with some models having it paralleling the coast, whereas the GFS shows more of an eastern track. Bottom line is we have a few days to figure it out, and we'll certainly update our forecast tomorrow. But as of right now, we simply expect this storm to steadily intensify, and from there on, we'll just have to put out a forecast track. But as of now, we still have plenty of time to monitor it. The northern system will slide off to the west, and it probably will develop into a minimal tropical cyclone, and all interests along the coast from here to here are going to have to really keep an eye on it. Either way, it's going to be producing a lot of heavy rainfall days over the next few days, so that's going to be the main focal point for that particular system. And as far as any tropical development further east is concerned, that's beyond the day to 4 to 5 time frame, and we'll just wait and see if any tropical lows form in that area, and if so, we'll begin to focus more into that area as well. So thanks again for checking out 28storms.com. We hope to see you again in the future. I would like to apologize for the length of this video, but we'll try to condense them more in the future. We're still pretty new at this, but go ahead and spread the word to anyone that you think may be interested, and come back and check us out for another video update sometime tomorrow.